Alright, I am back with another video, and today we have a special treat. We now have the Barbarian subclasses combined mod available to all platforms, including console, through the mod manager. This adds almost all of the fighter subclasses from tabletop to Baldur's Gate 3. It was done by the same creator who made the similar fighter subclasses mod. And I just have to say, and I'm going to butcher this name, I apologise, Smragdanoth 8? You might just be one of my favourite people in the world right now because you are making my job so much more interesting and fun. Thank you so much for the work that you do, putting all of your effort into these mods. In fact, and I've seen your comments on this channel as well, giving your insight into my builds that I make with your mods. So thank you so much for all the work that you do, and I really hope you are seeing this and your day is going well. But anyways, yes, today we are going to be looking at one of the new Barbarian subclasses added to the game through this mod, the Zealot, which, can I just say right now, fits the Dark Urge to a T. For those of you that don't know what a Zealot Barbarian is, imagine if a Barbarian was a paladin. Basically its main feature that you get at level 3 is that one of your attacks is going to deal extra radiant, or necrotic, you can actually choose, damage when you attack. Also getting some other cool, flavorful things. So basically it's like if paladins became zealots and went crazy, which is what makes it so fun. But the thing is the mod developer went the extra mile here and added some extra features which are going to make a playthrough with this build feels so much more authentic to the Dark Urges playstyle and kind of lore and such like that, if you're doing an evil run. So for those of you who have seen my older Origin build, there is some familiarity here between that and this build. However, this one is a bit more updated, and I've changed one of the classes a little bit significantly because obviously in my original build we were like a fighter barbarian, whereas this time we're doing something slightly different. So moving on, let's talk about it. So, I've decided to make this a canon Dark Urge build, so we're going to be playing as a white Dragonborn today. This is just going to give us the base racial movement speed, but it is also going to give us the Frost Breath, which is going to allow us to spit out a cone that deals 2d6 cold damage, which can be useful in certain situations. You can do this once per short rest, as well as resistance to cold damage. Overall, it can come in handy sometimes, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. Of course, we're going to be kicking things off with Barbarian to gain access to its weapon and armor proficiencies, as we are going to want those, as well as good old Rage, giving us extra damage, as well as resistance to physical damage. So overall, just a decent, solid level 1 kit. You're going to be playing this as a standard Barbarian up until a certain point in Act 3, where you get, let's just say, a certain revelation. Otherwise, you're just going to be kind of playing this as normal. So, moving on to the ability scores. We're going to be having strength at 8 because we don't really need it. However, I am going to be taking a feat later that will kind of make up for our lower strength. I'll explain that in more detail when we get there. But otherwise, if you do want to use potions of giant strength on this build, I actually do recommend it, as it would come with certain buffs like having better synergy with reckless attack for this build, as well as giving you a bit more mobility when it comes to jumping. So I would say, actually, if you do want to use them on this build, I would recommend going for the giant potions, because they would actually elevate this build quite a lot, gameplay and roleplay wise. Otherwise, you don't actually need to take them for this build to work exceptionally well. I did not use them in my testing, and this build still may be one of the strongest things I've made, and that's not necessarily just because of the mod, it's just a well-rounded build. So, anyways, dexterity is at 17 because we're going to be bumping that up with a half feat later, and it is going to be our main attacking modifier. Also, I wanted high initiative on this build, you'll see why later. Constitution is at 16 because I think it's a perfect middle ground for a barbarian. This is going to give us more than enough HP. By the time this build is finished, I was sat at a quite comfortable 117, which worked great for me. Intelligence is at 8 because we don't need it. Wisdom is at 10 because I didn't want our wisdom saves to be totally abysmal, and Charisma is at 14 because I want to make those oh-so-amazing Barbarian intimidation checks to allow us to be the face of the party, because most of the time the Dark Urge is. This allows us to use our Haunted One background, giving us access to medicine and intimidation checks to work out for us pretty nicely. Medicine, maybe not so much, but intimidation, definitely. Like I said, those Barbarian checks are very fun, and usually come with advantage. Moving on, I've also gone for Athletics to help out our jumping a little bit, as well as Perception to help out our vision a little bit. Not the greatest selection of skill proficiencies here, I will say, but the ones that we can choose will work just fine. Moving on to level 2 of Barbarian, we're going to get Danger Sense, giving us advantage on dexterity saving throws against traps, spells, and surfaces. Because this is a dexterity Barbarian build, we're pretty much never going to fail those checks now, which means Fireball does a lot less damage, which is great. We're also going to get Reckless Attack here, and this is why I specifically mentioned the Hill Giant Potions. You gain advantage on attack rolls until the end of your turn, but enemies also have advantage against you. Now you see, here's the thing. The actual tooltip for Reckless Attack when you use it on your hotbar says that it only affects attacks using strength. So unfortunately, with our dexterity daggers, it's not really going to make a difference, unfortunately. But if you use a potion of Hill Giant Strength or Giant Strength or whatever, it will take our strength very high, meaning that that is the attack modifier used for our attacks, or even with our finesse weapons, meaning that you can use Reckless Attack on it, which will give you advantage all of the time, which again will make sense when we talk about some stuff later in the build. But for now, just keep that in mind. Moving on to Barbarian level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and look at everything we have available to us. Battle Rager Beast, definitely going to make a build with that. Juggernaut Storm Herald, but of course today we're talking about the Zealot. Zealot is going to give us a few things immediately at level 3. First off, we're going to get Warrior of the Gods. If a spell, such as Revivify, has the sole effect of restoring you to life but not undeath, the caster doesn't need material components to cast a spell on you. So this is the direct tabletop text for what this ability does, which can be a bit confusing to newer players who don't really know what this is. Basically, how this is implemented in the game is that if an ally is nearby you while you're downed, they don't actually need to do anything to, like, actually heal you up. So if you die next to them, they could just get you back up. Like, a new thing will appear on their hotbar if they're within a certain range of you that they could just use to get you back up without needing to cast a spell or use a Revivify scroll. It's a bit of a niche feature, I'm not going to lie, as this build probably isn't going to go down that often, and usually if you go down and you haven't flat out died from death saving throws, you can still get back up anyway. So overall, this feature is basically just trying to make a kind of awkward tabletop feature work in BG3, and it does work very, very well. Honestly, credit to the mod creator for actually making that work in a way that also allowed this mod to be on consoles. Very, very good. So overall, it's a fun little thing that may come up, maybe in hardened mode, maybe things like honor mode, definitely could be useful. Otherwise, it's kind of niche, not really too much to worry about there. We also do just keep the regular rage. There's no specific modification to our rage here, unlike some of the other subclasses. But now we get to choose Divine Fury. You can channel Divine Fury into your weapon attacks. You choose either Radiant or Necrotic damage to deal during your first successful weapon attack per turn while raging. So, as long as we're raging, the first attack we do every turn is going to deal extra Necrotic or Radiant damage. Your choice. It's entirely up to you what you want to choose here. I felt Necrotic felt the overall, like, kind of helped with the overall vibe of the build a bit more. It's going to deal at 1d6 plus half of our Barbarian level at base. So by the time this build is done, spoilers I guess for the leveling scheme, but we are going to have a 1d6 plus 4 bonus on this attack, which, I mean, it's free extra damage every turn. That's just great. But you can pick Radiant depending if you want to do some shenanigans with Radiating Orb, which I'll talk about a bit later, but I do think Necrotic fits the overall Duellist thing a bit more. But here's where the build gets really, really cool for people who love lore and roleplay playthroughs. You go here, we get to choose who we are faithful to. This is like picking a deity as a cleric. Obviously, all of the cleric deities are here, and then more so. By picking one of these, unless you go for the unaligned option at the very bottom, if you don't want to go for that, basically, you gain all of the cleric dialogue and some paladin-based dialogue as well with a barbarian, which is very, very cool. One of the main reasons why I wanted to have at least some charisma on this build. So, of course, we are going to be making the Zealot of Bhaal. But that's going to have people thinking, well, wait a minute. If this is meant to be a canon Dark Urge build... oh my god, my voice cracked then. Whoops. If this is meant to be a canon Dark Urge build, then he doesn't even know he's the son of Bhaal. He doesn't even know he's a Duellist until, like, the very, very end of the game. I mean, technically, I guess Skeleritus Fel could kind of imply that and blah, 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 blah. But really, it doesn't make 100% sense that this guy would be spouting Bhaal's rhetoric when he doesn't even remember, you know, anything other than his own name. So, this doesn't make sense. But maybe this could just be an interesting what-if scenario, right? Maybe, what if the Dark Urge never did lose his memories? What if he just went on a murderous, bloody, zealous rampage spree? It could be a really interesting idea for a playthrough where you get to use all these fun, ball-based dialogue options, as well as being able to just absolutely destroy people in combat as well. I think this is going to make for an excellent playthrough, where again, it's like, if he didn't lose his memories, just how insane would he actually be? And well, you get to roleplay that out. The perfect Evil Dirge run. At Barbarian level 4, we get to choose our first feat, and this one's going to be an interesting one. We're going with Athlete and bumping up our dexterity. But why Athlete? Well, here's the thing. Your jump distance is going to increase by 50%, meaning that even with our lower strength, or even higher, depending on if you took those potions, you are going to be able to jump a massive distance. This is going to be great because we are going to be playing like a Duellist assassin type playstyle with Barbarian, a bit similar to my Panther build, by the time everything is said and done, so getting that extra jump distance is great. Also, if we're knocked prone, we can still get a bit of movement out of our movement speed, even if we have to stand up. And it also kind of just was nice to round out the build with this, bumping up our dexterity as well as getting this extra bonus. Considering we didn't really need to put that singular point into anything else, it just kind of made sense to pick up something that would bump up our dexterity, and this feels great for this build, so I highly recommend it. At Barbarian level 5, we're going to get fast movement, giving us even more movement speed as long as we're not wearing heavy armor, and extra attack. Now, here's the thing. So I said, I always like to make the joke of like, yeah, you know what extra attack does, but apparently some people don't. So here we go. You can make an additional free attack after making an unarmed or weapon attack using your action. If you gain an extra attack feature from more than one class, they don't add together, unless you're playing a Pact of the Blade Warlock or Moon Druid, just in case you were wondering. So yeah, for those of you who didn't know what extra attack does, there you go. Oh, that one guy who made that joke on my last video is going to find that very funny, I'm sure. At Barbarian level 6, we're going to get our next subclass feature as well as an additional rage charge. We now have Fanatical Focus. If you fail a saving throw while raging, you can re-roll it, and you must use the new roll. You can only use this ability once per rage. So yeah, a free saving throw re-roll once per rage. That's honestly pretty good. Like, I don't think people realize, like, even though this ability isn't the most in-depth or the most mechanically, like, complex, like, it's a really strong ability. It's the Yu-Gi-Oh! Effect. The shorter a card's effect is, sometimes that makes it some of the most broken stuff in the game. And in this case, while it's not the most broken stuff in the game, you never know when that critical saving throw success, especially on a Barbarian with low wisdom and intelligence, can actually be the difference between winning and losing a combat. So honestly, I love this feature. And moving on. Now, I would say for the leveling scheme of this build, by level 6 of Barbarian, you kind of have everything you want at this immediate point in time. So I'm going to say let's multi-class here and come back to Barbarian a bit later. And of course, since we are playing with the Dark Urge being a Duellist murder man, we are going to go with Rogue. Rogue is just going to add so much to this build. Not only is it going to give us a skill proficiency and 2 expertise, including Intimidation, and I'm going to go for Stealth expertise as well, this is just going to make our build feel so much better. Because not with that, like, +8 to our Intimidation on these Barbarian checks, that's just going to feel absolutely amazing. And having a +10 to Stealth as well, so we get to play that stealthy assassin type too. Trust me, this feels really, really good in practice. We're also going to get access to Sneak Attack, and because we are using finesse weapons, we will actually be able to use Sneak Attack on this build. So, if you've got advantage on your first turn of combat, which you could potentially do from Reckless Attack, or other things we'll get into in a minute, which is typical rogue stuff, you can go for a Sneak Attack with the Zealot's Divine Fury, meaning that you're going to get a lot of extra damage on that first attack. So overall, this is kind of a nuking build, and it only gets better. Moving on to level 2 of Rogue, we're going to get Cunning Action, allowing us to hide, dash, and disengage as a bonus action. Dashing is going to be great for this build for reasons we will go through in a minute. At Rogue level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and well, I mean, I don't think we'd really be a ballless build if we didn't go for Assassin. Assassin is going to give us a ton of things that are really going to be useful for this build. We're going to get Assassinate Initiative, allowing us to gain advantage on attack rolls against creatures who haven't taken a turn yet. So that first attack where we get that guaranteed sneak attack with the extra damage is going to feel very, very nice. We're also going to get Assassinate Ambush. Any successful attack roll against a surprise creature is a critical hit. Again, boosting all of the damage that we do. So, seriously, this is going to get pretty stupid very quickly. And then finally, Assassin's Alacrity. Quick as an alley cat in a rain dark alley, you immediately restore an action and a bonus action at the start of combat. So here's the thing with this. So I think everyone who has ever played a dual-wielding build in this game will immediately toggle off the auto offhand attack. For those of you that don't know, and I'll be surprised if you don't, there's a little thing under your character portrait on the hotbar where you can toggle the ability to automatically use your offhand attack. Now, most people will turn this off because, of course, your offhand attack will cause you to lose your bonus action whenever you make an attack with your action, right? Obviously, most people don't want this. However, with Assassin's Alacrity, on this build, there's a little bit of cheese you can do with that auto offhand attack. If you attack someone with the dual wielding on, you will automatically use your action and bonus action to attack, technically getting 2 attacks off before combat actually starts. And because Assassin's Alacrity immediately gives us our bonus and bonus action back, you can then use that bonus action at the very start of combat to rage, and then get your X attack and extra attack off immediately after. You will have seen me do this in the combat footage. So this will be the only time probably in the history of the channel where I will recommend that at least for some portions of combat, you turn on auto offhand attack. I know, it's weird, but it works. Moving on to Rogue level 4, we are going to get that juicy extra feat, and I think at this point your best move is just going to be maxing out that dexterity for the most damage and chance to hit possible. There are obviously other things you can go for here though, but we'll talk about that with the final feat of the build. Moving on, now at this point you could go to level 6 of Rogue if you wanted a little bit of extra tankiness with something like Uncanny Dodge, but really I want to go for extra Rogue stuff and another feat, so, extra Rogue stuff, extra Barbarian stuff and another feat, so we're going to go back to Barbarian for the rest of our levels, especially since the more Barbarian levels we have, the more damage our Fury will do. We now get Feral Instinct, giving us a +3 bonus to initiative and can't be surprised. I actually really like this feature thematically for pairing with Assassin. We are great at surprising others, but we also know when we're about to get jumped. So I actually think it's pretty cool to have this on this build. So we're going to have a great bonus to our initiative, pretty much always go first, and then just get to go absolutely ham. And it's great as a Barbarian as well, because not only can we do a bunch of damage early on, we can also rage early on, basically meaning that our setup is initially complete, and we can, after doing our big Nova round at the start of combat, we now have just this tanky, unstoppable force. I really love Feral Instinct with Assassin. I think it pairs so well. Finally, at Barbarian level 8, we are going to get another feat. And, well, the world's your oyster. You can kind of pick whatever you want here. Dual wielder could obviously work, as this is a dual wielding build. It would give you a bit more freedom and a little bit of extra bonus armor class. I think I did choose this in the end for my testing, just because I was like, the extra bonus armor class would be nice, so you could go with that as well. Oh no, I didn't. I know what I picked. Defensive Duellist. When attacked while wielding a finesse weapon you are proficient with, you can use your reaction to add your proficiency bonus to the armor class, possibly causing the attack to miss. This will make this build so defensive that you're basically unstoppable. It just gives you such a big buff to your armor class, and since we are wielding finesse weapons, you'll be able to use this quite a lot. But let's talk about some of the other options. Like I said, there's dual wielder. I also recommend the charger feat as well. It gives you 2 really unique and interesting weapon attacks, like Charger Weapon Attack, which allows you to deal more damage and slam through opponents without provoking opportunity attacks. This does cost you bonus action, but if you're not worried about using your offhand attack, which there may be a reason not to be in this build, you can just get extra damage and move around the battlefield really easily. So I actually do recommend Charger. It feels very feral, I guess, with this kind of setup, so I think it'll appeal to a lot of people. There's obviously the Lucky feat, which is always great to have. I could even see durable. If you maybe didn't put like your +1 at the start of the build into Constitution, you could actually round it up here and get even more hit points per short rest, making you tankier over longer kind of sessions without a long rest, right? Although long rests are so frequent that I don't think it might be the best thing in the world, but hey, it's an option. Mobile for more movement speed would be absolutely amazing on this build. Even though we have a bonus action dash, you could just be zooming everywhere. There's so many different things you could grab here. I would even say resilient dexterity, maybe in place of athlete, could also work to give you even better chances at succeeding your dexterity saving throws, basically making you virtually unkillable against things like Fireball, which could be really, really nice. There is the, what else did I think? Sharpshooter could also work on this build since we do have a ranged weapon and we can make, you know, like advantage and such like that. There's the slasher feat as well, though we are mainly using piercing damage, but if you decide to use slashing weapons, that could work. You just have so many options. The tough feat, just making you tanky as hell with a total of 141 HP. That could be amazing. I personally will go with what I used in testing, and that being defensive duelist, just for that extra reaction-based finesse, just to get that armor class bump, because I think it can really help the build. Speaking of, that is the build. And, I mean, looking at the hotbar here, it doesn't seem like much. All you've got is sneak attack, dashing, and rage, but everything else lies in the passives. You are going to have an excellent time with damage, sustained like presence on the battlefield, as you're going to be an incredible tank, and again, it's going to feel so great for a lore-based playthrough with all of the dialogue tags related to Bhaal that you're going to have. You're going to have the cleric stuff, you're going to have the paladin stuff, while playing this feral Dark Urge barbarian who just wants to kill everything in his way, and to be honest, who the hell is gonna stop him? It's honestly amazing. I think for most people who just want to do like an evil run, maybe like just casually, or maybe even for the first time if they're okay with using mods on an initial playthrough, this could be one of the best ways to do it. It could be a great way to explore a Dark Urge run where you're just being as evil as possible, giving into the urge at every possible turn. It's mechanically very simple to pilot. You just sneak in, attack, do your massive amount of damage with your assassin perks, and then just rage, and then all of a sudden you're unstoppable. Again, a bit similar to my Panther build from a week or two ago. It was a little while ago now, but it was very, very popular video. Thanks, guys. So yeah, overall, you're just going to have a lot to do with this build, but like with all of my builds, it is elevated by its equipment choices, and I really decided to play into that I am the main character type vibe, so we got a lot of powerful things here, but of course early game options are also available, as always. Moving on for my two weapons of choice. Now, in my personal opinion, I always picture, like for Dark Urge, especially the Assassin Dark Urge, as wielding daggers. But of course, we can use any weapon with this build. I do just recommend that you are using a finesse-based weapon so that it uses our dexterity, but pretty much every weapon is available to us, especially with the Potions of Giant Strength, so honestly, it's a pick your favorite type situation, but I found this setup to be really damn cool. In our main hand, we're going to be wielding the Rhapsody, giving us a +1 bonus to attack rolls, damage, and spell save DC for every foe we kill, up to a maximum of +3. So this could just make us even stronger the more killing we do. I mean, if that doesn't sound like a Dark Urge thing, I don't know what is. We're also going to be able to possibly inflict bleeding when hitting a creature with this weapon while hiding or invisible. Well, obviously we're going to be hiding a lot with our stealth attacks, but as we're playing as a Dark Urge, we have a way to consistently become invisible as well. So this weapon is just, I mean, I know it's meant to be like Astarion's kind of endgame weapon, but really, it feels more appropriate for the Dark Urge, I'm not gonna lie. And in the offhand, once you reach the end game, you might as well grab Orin's Dagger. This is going to allow you to have a dagger that deals an additional 1d4 necrotic damage. The number you need to succeed a critical hit is reduced by 1 while attacking, so now we crit on a 19 or higher. Very nice. You're also going to get the ability to use True Strike on this build as well, but as a bonus action, giving you advantage on your next attack roll guaranteed without needing to do it as an action. This actually makes True Strike very strong, although it's only usable once per short rest. But however, there's more. This is a +2 weapon, and while it is in your offhand, whenever a creature misses you with a melee attack, you may immediately strike back and gain True Strike, meaning that you have advantage on your next attack roll against them. So basically, you're always going to be using sneak attack, and you get a +1 to your armor class. Overall, That's pretty damn good. Now, obviously, this is a big endgame combination. Really using these two daggers on most builds is going to make you feel powerful, but the way it synergizes both lore-wise and mechanically with the kind of build that we're going for here, I couldn't not pair these two together. And if you go down the Duellist kind of like storyline right as you go into Act 3, which you absolutely can do, you can obtain this weapon very early on anyway, and then go for astarions right after and get this. So, at the very least, you want to get this in your offhand as quick as possible as soon as you get into Act 3. But of course, in the early game, the Knife of the Undermountain King is going to be your go-to weapon. It contains the same critical hit threshold reduction, and you can choose to wield this with the dagger if you want, to score an 18 on to score a critical hit on an 18 or higher, which is very powerful. And also, whenever you roll a 2 or less on a damage die, you can re-roll the die taking the higher result, so you're just going to be outputting more damage overall on all of your attacks. You may prefer this to the Rhapsody, considering it has a higher amount of base damage, but either way, it's going to be a great early game weapon. And since you don't actually need to dual wield anything with this build until you get the Orin's dagger, I mean, you can dual wield other stuff if you want. Really, the Knight for the Undermountain King is actually going to be all you need in the early game, especially since your bonus action is going to kind of be taken up by a lot of stuff in this build. So don't worry about having to go for dual wielding straight away. The Knight for the Undermountain King is going to be more than enough. It does also have the Shadowblade passive, but as of now in patch 7 and pretty much since the game's launch, Shadowblade on all weapons that have it, including Shadowblade itself, is busted and does nothing, so unfortunately you're not going to get that advantage on attack rolls against slightly or heavily obscured targets. But if that's fixed in patch 8, which I hope it is, that's going to come up a bit more often. But yeah, in my personal opinion, I do like the Rhapsody more flavour and mechanically wise, but the Knife of the Undermountain King is going to be an amazing early game option. Moving on to the Helm, we have the Helm of Baldur. When I said I was going for main character energy, I meant it. Of course, if you're going to be playing a proper playthrough, you're going to want to do everything in the game, meaning that the Helm of Baldur is going to be a goal you're going to want to strive for. It's going to give you 2 hit points at the beginning of every turn, which, I mean, this build having self-regenerative healing, like Ball gives you a healing factor a la Wolverine. Believe it or not, that's foreshadowing. Anyways, basically, yeah. Basically, you get some self-healing, which is going to make you feel absolutely unstoppable. In fact, if you go down in combat and you're not outright dead, this helmet will just get you back up every time, which I think is hilarious. You'll have a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws. You cannot be stunned, and you're immune to critical hits. Now, fun fact about this helmet. If this is maybe your second or third playthrough and you want to get this helmet right away as soon as you get into Act 3, you can. You don't actually need to fight the boss that guards this helm in order to get it. You need to fight him to get the weapon that he drops, but you can actually just walk right around him without interacting with him, pick up this helmet and then leave, and then come back to fight him later. So if you know how to get into the location where this helm is stored, you can just get it the second you enter Act 3 without even having to worry. So yeah, the Helm of Baldur, definitely recommended. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the Deathstalker Mantle is our cloak of choice. Whenever we kill an enemy, we become invisible for 2 turns, obviously synergizing with the Rhapsody and our just rogue levels in general, so yeah, definitely want that one. Also because it completes the fit, and looks cool as fuck. Moving on to my obvious armor of choice, we have the Duellist Armour. This is going to give us our canon outfit, as far as I'm concerned, in Act 3, as well as the Aura of Murder ability. Enemies within 2 meters become vulnerable to piercing damage, meaning that all of our dagger damage is going to be doubled unless they are resistant or immune to it. So yes, if an enemy is not already resistant to piercing damage, you're going to murder them pretty hard. You're also going to gain another +2 bonus to your initiative rolls. At this point, you're always guaranteed to go first. Moving on, we have a few options for gloves, but I'll discuss those in a minute. For now, the gloves of the balanced hands will give you 2 weapon fighting, so you can add your ability modifier to offhand damage attacks. This only really matters if you're dual wielding. If you decide not to in the end, then you can drop these gloves for the other alternative options that I have suggested, which I'll get to in a minute. Otherwise though, these will help if you want to make sure you're able to do more damage with your offhand attacks without needing to take a dip into fighter, because I really didn't feel like we had room for that on this build. But if you wanted to drop 2 levels of Barbarian, which would kind of bring down some of your damage, but then throw in 2 levels of fighter for 2 weapon fighting and action surge, Well, I mean, you can see where the power would therein lie. You could probably kill a boss on the first turn of combat, but I didn't really want to do that for this build, but that is available if you decide to go down that route, in which case you can use my other glove options. Moving on finally to the boots, and of course we're using the Linebreaker boots. We're a barbarian that uses melee weapons, that multiclassed into rogue and can dash as a bonus action. For Linebreaker boots, once per turn when you dash, you'll gain Wrath for 2 turns. Wrath will give you extra weapon damage for each turn remaining. You gain a +1 bonus to damage with melee weapons for every turn of the condition remaining. This can stack up to +7, meaning that all of our weapon attacks could do an additional 7 damage, which is insane, just for the minor cost of using our bonus action to dash every turn to keep the condition up. Now, of course, as of patch 7, the Linebreaker boots are busted because they actually give you 3 turns of Wrath, and it's not limited to once per turn. We don't have a second bonus action in this case, so that once per turn limitation not being there doesn't really matter for us, but getting 3 turns instead of 2 is still pretty strong. This will probably be fixed in patch 8. I don't know, I haven't actually looked at the proper patch notes yet from the stress test, kind of keeping myself spoiler free for now, but otherwise, even if these boots do get patched to have their intended effect, they'll still be extremely powerful, and are probably what I would recommend for this build, especially since you can get them very early on in the game. But anyways, let's talk about our alternative options for the early game and other options in general. So for the early game helm, you can go for the Cap of Wrath, which will still give us that Wrath status effect, but in this case it's whenever we hit less than 50% HP. Unfortunately, this piece of equipment is also bugged, and it's actually nerfed in this case. Instead of gaining Wrath for every 2 turns, we gain only one turn of Wrath instead for every turn that we are under 50% HP. This kind of sucks, because you lose 1 stack of Wrath every turn, so this is basically just stopping you from losing Wrath. So what they need to do in order to fix Wrath as a status condition is take 1 point of Wrath from the boots and give it to the Cap, and then everything is as it's supposed to be. I don't know, I just find it kind of funny, but it's great as an early game option to start building up that Wrath for big damage. Moving on to our armor, we actually have the Luminous armor here, a piece of medium armor that whenever we deal radiant damage, we can cause a radiant shockwave, inflicting radiating orb, which reduces enemy attack rolls' chance to hit. This is if you pick the radiant option for this build, in which case you can get a lot of usage out of this, but if you took the necrotic damage version like I did, feel free to pick any of the standard early game barbarian options, like the graceful cloth for a buff to your dexterity, or the barbarian clothing that gives you a +2 to constitution, that I just cannot remember the name of right now, but all of the standard barbarian stuff will work here. But I did want to show off a potential armor choice that could give you even more tankiness and survivability with the radiating orb effect that works with this build, because we have the ability to do radiant damage. And hey, maybe you're using this for a redemption urge build for some reason. In which case, yeah, choose the Radiant option and that'll feel very thematic. Moving on to our alternative glove choices, you can go for the Dark Justiciar Gauntlets, either version. The Dark Justiciar Gauntlets that you can just pick up in any playthrough will give you all of your attacks an additional 1d4 necrotic damage, which is great, fits the vibe of the build very nicely. But if you're going pure evil and you make a certain decision at the end of Act 2, you'll be able to get these upgraded versions which come with the same ability but an extra spell built in. This spell allows you to, as a bonus action, inflict necrotic damage to creatures who are lightly or heavily obscured. Obviously we can't cast this while raging, but hey, it is still technically an upgrade, but really, you could just go with the basic version. And finally, as an alternative option for the boots when you get into Act 3, you can go for the Bone Spike boots, giving you even more armor class and more jump distance, as well as the ability to use your bonus action to jump onto foes, potentially knocking them prone every turn. Overall, pretty standard barbarian set of boots here, but could definitely elevate the build if you find that the Linebreaker boots, maybe they've been patched or something, just aren't really working out for you, but in most cases the Linebreaker boots will be better. And for once, we've not got any modded cosmetics here. This is all vanilla. All of this armor is what you see here, and there's no camp clothing, and we've colored it in the black and furnace red dye from the base game. So this is about as canon dirge as it gets. I mean, obviously we've got a modded subclass here, but hey, you know, who's really taking stock of that? Hi, post-editing Hobo here. So I totally forgot to talk about the amulets and rings, so I'll quickly go over that now as the combat footage is playing. Basically we've got the Amulet of Bhaal, because of course we do, it's like the canon type of thing, and it lets us inflict bleeding on foes who still have their full hit points, so that makes sense for our playstyle. And for our 2 rings, I decided to lean more on the kind of self-regenerating health type thing. So we've got the Ring of Regeneration to give us a bit more health every turn, in addition to what the helmet gives us. And then as well, we've got the Whispering Promise, since every time we get healed, we're going to get an extra 1d4 bonus to attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. So yeah, that's basically it. Nothing too complex there. I did also forget to mention the bow as well, but past me actually recognized this, and we'll talk about it in a minute. So yeah, apologies for that. This video ended up being a bit more all over the place than I initially imagined, but that's just because I'm so excited about Barbarian subclasses. Anyways, I'll let you go. Back to past me. But yes, anyway, that is the build, and what else can I say other than this thing just does its job. It's a very, very powerful build. Again, simple to play, but and simple to build, but just amazingly fun to use. Overall, it just does so much just by existing. You're going to be an incredible tank. You're going to be able to take out some enemies right at the start of combat. And yeah, you're just going to do extremely well in most cases. And I just realised I forgot to talk about the bow. Yeah, so the bow is kind of whatever. I'll keep the combat footage playing, but we are using the bow of the Banshee. You can see a link in the description for the visual, as I always link all the wiki pages for the weapons and how to get them. Basically, on a hit, doesn't matter what weapon you use. For this, it could be your daggers, so any attack will do. You can inflict the Frightened condition, which I think just makes sense for this murderous Zealot Dark Urge, and you gain a 1d4 bonus to attack and damage against frightened creatures. So, basically for free, you're just getting more damage and a powerful status condition. So yeah, make sure you got the bow of the Banshee on this build. Always check the description, because half the time I do forget things like that. But yes, as I said, that is the build. Really easy to play, really easy to make, but one of the best builds I think I've got for just being a fun-to-play build that's great for combat and lore-based gameplay. And once again, thank you to Dragdanoff. I'm so sorry, I have to actually read your name off my phone. Ragdanoff8 for making the absolutely incredible mods that were on Nexus for the longest time, but have now been adjusted to work for all platforms. Honestly, the work you're doing for the community is absolutely stellar. And it's completely revitalized my love for making builds, because you're just giving me so many more tools to work with. I think I will take a little bit of just a quick time for a chat here. I'm not sure if I need to make like a dedicated post about this, but there has been a slight divide in the community about whether or not I should be using mods in my videos. It seems to be like the answer is mostly yes, but there are definitely a few vocal outliers who say that they're not really interested in modded builds because it's not really the vanilla mechanics of the game. And I totally understand that, but I'm like 250 builds deep at this point. I gotta do something new. Obviously, when patch 8 comes out, that whole point will probably be completely mute, because, well, I mean, I will have a bunch of new subclasses to work with that are all really strong and canon and made by the devs and all that. But I don't know. If there really is a lot of people who don't want me to use mods anymore, might be the direction the channel has to go leading up to patch 8. I don't know, we'll see. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.